It is the continued unraveling of Erika Jayne and Lisa Rinna, but what does it all mean? We will find out a little bit later, but first we need to start with how the last couple episodes have been starting with some FaceTime catch-ups, this time after a filler compilation of Lisa Rinna making her morning tea and coffee, but this time most of the cast is ending their quarantine. But this to me is the re-entry of Rinna back into the center of the drama for the rest of the season, as she has been slightly absent post Lois passing, but we also see this is really the setup for a wine tasting at Rinna's house. I noticed that she had on a very similar outfit to her early on confessional look in the season, most notably when she was talking about the home invasion on the first couple episodes with that black headband and that buttoned up big button top collar conservative looking thing to, I guess, feel like a victim or make people feel bad for her, which I'm thinking this means this might be a pickup scene to set the scene at the end of the season as production was ending and they were all doing their confessionals. I don't know, but I couldn't help but connect the two, considering Dorit is supposed to be known as this fashionista who never repeats an outfit, but she did say she was going to work in that outfit, so maybe that was a subtle like wink wink that this show is actually a job for them, which we all know, even though they want us to think otherwise. But anyways, I'm glad they also flashed back to the Italy trip years ago where Rinna Rosé was born on the show, and I was wondering what happened to that, but it just shows how long it takes these things to come to the market. But now we are with Sutton, whose dog was destroying her lawn before Sutton, her assistant, her son Philip, and her daughter Porter are all talking about Philip's going away to college. Now this update comes after Sutton's lonely Christmas as she teaches them how to make her quote-unquote gross chicken salad with like heaps and heaps of mayo. And we get some background on Sutton as a mom whose kids clearly did not let their childhood fears define them, as we learned Philip was a fearful flyer growing up, but then on his 18th birthday recently, he actually went skydiving, which of course Sutton, as a mom, as any mom would do, I would think, was not very happy he did that, but was just glad he survived. And we also learned that Porter wanted to work at Chipotle as her summer job, but ended up working at her mom's store for the summer, where we learned Sutton's son wanted to join the army to get out of his comfort zone, but Sutton thought maybe we should try sending you to Georgia during the summer to stock vending machines. And of course, a month later, he said he would rather go to college instead of joining the military. Smart idea, but we learned that he and his mom came to a happy medium of going to military school as the medium between military and college. And it just shows that even though these kids clearly had privilege that most people will never see in their life, Sutton still tries to keep them as normal as they possibly can. And I actually think this was a really well-timed scene, considering so many parents are sending their kids off to college right now in America. And it, to me, indicates Sutton is here to stay on the show because they are really making the effort to show more of her life. And of course, it helps the two kids of hers that we saw, at least on the show, are now 18 years or older. I'm guessing that's why we see them on camera now, whereas I think last season we only saw Porter, who is now 19, and she was just 18 last year when she was on camera. And I don't really recall seeing any of her kids or even pictures, I don't think, of Sutton's kids before that point. So that makes me think that's why Sutton came onto the show as a friend of, because probably her ex didn't want the kids on camera before they were 18. All right, so Dorit and Garcelle are now out for dinner to catch up, which is a stark contrast to last season's rift, but they seem over their hurdles after some apologies, is what we learn. And we learn Garcelle is actually in the middle of recording her audiobook for her book that just came out, which is coupled with a lot of nerves of releasing it with so many never before told personal stories of hers, whether that be her interaction with Bill Cosby at one point, which she said was scary, or her posing for Playboy, which are just very few of the things that made headlines when her book came out, including the now infamous Erika tossing Garcelle's book in the trash with a lot of outdated items in that trash, which I think now that I look back on it, clearly Erika thought she was being so smart and whatever, and people took it as her like just being outdated and old, but I think she was trying to say that Garcelle was. Just a thought there. But anyways, conversation quickly turned to the recent PK DUI revelation in the press, where Dorit is still making sure the narrative isn't changed to PK actually being charged with DUI, where Garcelle confesses her shock in reading an article saying PK was driven home by a police officer after being let out without any charges, saying that would never happen to her or any of her friends who are black. Adding to what she said in last episode's after show we covered in last episode's members only extra recap and react, where she didn't touch on the race part, which I think was kind of a precursor to this. But she's basically here implying that police aren't that nice to black people, which I've said a lot on this last season when this topic came up, so you can go back and watch that if you want. But also, this DUI storyline continues to throw me off because the home invasion was so dramatized in comparison to this story. So it just seems out of place, this DUI story, maybe just because it got a different treatment. I don't know. But they quickly move on to looking forward to Lisa Rinna's wine tasting upcoming event, where Garcelle fills Dorit in on her recent meetup with Erika, where Dorit questions if Garcelle felt concerned after Erika admitted she would not be drinking. She should not be drinking on the meds, where Dorit continued to be shocked to learn from Garcelle, not her friend Rinna or even Erika herself, that Erika fell and hit her head after going home from Diana's party due to all the drinking. And Dorit is also confused at Garcelle telling her that Erika told her Sutton was a liability. After Garcelle confirmed our theory in her confessional of them seemingly trying to get her to distance herself from Sutton to make the takedown of Sutton much easier as public enemy number one, where Dorit ends with a very sensible, while kind of joking, call out of her quote-unquote friend Erika, saying even if Sutton was quote-unquote going down or diving off the cliff, it doesn't mean Garcelle or any of Sutton's other friends are automatically going down with her. And I think it is interesting that Dorit to Garcelle's face is agreeing with her and giving her the benefit of the doubt on expressing concern over the Erika drinking. But in the after show, Dorit to Erika's face is asking these leading questions to support Erika's narrative of the other girls making the drinking out to be something that it isn't. And also, I think this approach by Erika to warn the girls of Sutton taking them down was exactly what Erika didn't like the girls doing to her last year, prompting Erika to assure the ladies that her legal and personal woes would not bring them down, even though that was a much bigger deal. Now, this just adds more to the whole contradiction, double standards, rules for thee, not for me theme from most of this cast most of the time this season, it seems. So we are now at Erika Jayne's modest shack of a house with her team, talking business on Pretty Mess Hair, prepping for the PR packages to go out to celebrity hairstylists so they can promote it on their Instagrams. But we learned that Mauricio is setting Erika up with an Olympic athlete NFL player, where Erika keeps reiterating her quote-unquote trying to get good dick, confessing she doesn't want to be a girlfriend to anyone right now because there isn't time for that. But she adds she recently sent a thanks for good dick text to the wrong guy, and then goes further saying rather seriously she wants to become a quote-unquote part-time dominatrix after a recent suggestion by one of her sexual partners. Now, she tries justifying it by saying she is bossy, likes latex and costumes, and likes administering a little bit of pain to someone who likes it as pleasure, adding, who knows old, rich, narcissistic men better than me? Might be the most self-aware thing she's ever said on the show, but she makes sure to also justify it by saying, well, it would only be for high-end clients, and I would only take on about 5 clients at a time. Okay, sure. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. Before last season's reunion, it was either Erika went full-on apology, real fess-up mode, or leaned all the way into her villain Erika Jayne alternate reality stage persona into her real life. And it looks like she isn't stopping doing the latter, which at least she's staying on brand. I mean, I keep giving her that. At least she's being consistent in that front. But unfortunately, it is not a good look in the court of public opinion and wouldn't be an issue if she wasn't still dealing with mounting legal issues that are very serious in nature. But then again, those mounting legal issues and the idea that she has no market value other than sex appeal or selling beauty illusion products might be the reason she is leaning into that Erika Jayne sex appeal side as a way to potentially get out of the legal and financial mess she is in, which is not a very pretty mess, if I may say so myself. But now to Sutton and Rinna, who are lunching together, where we get a little bit of an Easter egg of the have a piece of bread, iconic Kim Richards Amsterdam comment moment to Lisa Rinna. And Rinna casually shuts down Sutton's offer to consult on Rinna, Rosé, or any business in general as far as aesthetic goes. But then they're just casually shading each other subtly over being scary or bitchy, where They go into somewhat of a fence mending mode, calling things from the beginning of the season charity-wise silly, but Rinna then admits, after saying this, I guess, at Kathy's house with Crystal recently, which was a scene we didn't see, that she does kind of like to torture Sutton a little bit. But Sutton calls Rinna something that I think came off as harmless in the moment because of partly the southern accent of Sutton, but that being calling Rinna the Grinch, which she says is because of the heart getting bigger and bigger over time, not that she isn't generous or she's kind of a Scrooge. Now, I think this comparison of Rinna to the Grinch by Sutton was a careful choice of words because it can have two meanings. And if the Elton John Oscar party drama from the beginning of the season is any indication, then I may believe Rinna is actually like the Grinch from a giving angle. Just saying, you can go back to the episode 2, I think, recap to hear my thoughts on that whole thing. But we will revisit this in a moment. Now, as everyone is on their way to Rinna Rosé's tasting party, we get some very clear picture of how diverse the storylines are this season, with Erika learning Kyle got a new puppy in quarantine, and Sutton learning Crystal gained 5 pounds from her isolation, where Sutton tries to ease Crystal's mind over this, as we know Crystal is very sensitive over body image and that sort of thing we've learned the last few weeks. But it is now finally time for Rinna Rosé party at the Hamlin household. And after some high-pitched hellos and some signature cocktail sipping, Erika actually opts to not have alcohol at this time, admitting to the group fully she was drinking on meds that she was advised not to drink on, saying explicitly it says on the bottle she should not be drinking, but she did it anyways, which Dorit now uses to justify what Garcelle has been saying for weeks and months now. And I actually wonder if this was some sort of legal thing behind the scenes at Bravo or NBC, where Erika was openly admitting on camera to not following a name brand drug, their advice on their own bottle. And maybe this admission and this whole kind of part of the storyline with Erika was a CYA moment for NBC and Bravo and the production company, even if Erika doesn't end up following through on changing her actions. We then get a funny moment of Dorit calling out Garcelle for being a label whore and plastering Balenciaga all over her, I guess, sweatshirt is what it is, after Garcelle called out Dorit last season for that same reason. But it looks like Dorit is more jealous than anything on her come down as opposed to Garcelle's come up in the designer fashion area. But I'm also going to warn Garcelle, the way I did with Sutton and everyone in this group, about showing off your expensive clothes. Just be careful. But after some Harry Hamlin playful talk with some flashbacks to Rinna's book detailing her sex life with Harry, Sheree and Erika lead Harry to asking him to rate Rinna's oral sex skills, where he finally says it is a 10 out of 5 after everyone noticed he delayed his response, which I thought was very, very interesting. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into the rumors about Rinna and Harry's lifestyle choices, if you will, but it does seem like they are baiting us to talk about them even more. Whether that be intentional or not, we don't know, but just seems a little spot on at this moment. Now, after we get caught up on who is and isn't present, Erika shares more about her interaction with Crystal at Diana's Christmas party related to the eating disorder things, which still at this point she is revising history only to talk about her question to Crystal about seeking professional help. But Erika opens the floor for this by adding Crystal said she hasn't sought help despite openly talking about her challenges that affect many young women. Now, Dorit then goes on to tell of a recent outing to the CNBC restaurant in Los Angeles called Craig's, where Crystal shared that she is vomiting every single day. And everyone present was shocked to hear this, while also wondering, why is Crystal talking about it to everyone but not getting help? Where Sutton actually backs up Crystal, who isn't present, by suggesting maybe Crystal is getting help, but she's just not sharing it with everyone publicly. And Sutton confesses she doesn't really want to get too involved since Crystal hasn't talked much about it to her. But the tasting then begins, and everyone seems to be liking what they are tasting, including Erika, where their tipsy messiness is followed by some much-needed grub to soak up their libations, where Dorit is now trying to set up Garcelle, quite the turn of events, on a date where Sheree, as a good friend, is also vetting this guy already. And of course, Erika has to add, well, how does his wallet look? And Erika continues on brand saying that she is having some great sex with the same person, but still denies that means that she is dating the person. And Dorit is now calling out her friend, Erika, for continuing to drink on the meds, where only a few moments ago, Erika said to the group her medication bottle says not to drink. And the women, I think, are finally all coming to their senses. But then Garcelle pulls Erika over to the side to talk about the comment since their last interaction of calling Sutton a liability, where Erika tries clarifying what she meant by saying she notices a pattern of Garcelle standing up for friends even when they do something wild, citing Denise Richards from a few seasons back. But Garcelle is adamant, saying she is just practicing being a good friend. And Garcelle does reiterate that she did call out Sutton recently for Sutton's response to Dorit's home invasion, where Erika doesn't want to have this Sutton conversation in front of Sutton, apparently because she thinks Garcelle would throw her under the bus and defend her friend Sutton, which is based in reality and probably true considering Garcelle is friends with Sutton. And as much as Erika wants to try to get Garcelle on her side and kind of throw Sutton under the bus, it's not really working. But Garcelle then admits she doesn't believe Erika in everything she says, especially after last year. And Erika confesses she thinks Garcelle isn't trying to understand her. And I personally don't see that. I don't think Garcelle would be having these one-on-ones to the side with Erika or going to meet her for drinks if she didn't care to hear her out. But after Garcelle and Erika rejoined the group, Sutton goes right into asking Erika why she thinks she is the liability as a friend, which we learned that Sutton just learned about this moment before Garcelle went to talk to Erika just now, so she was clearly festering on this as Garcelle and Erika were over there talking. But Erika goes right into finally saying to Sutton's face, after Sutton opened the door for her, mind you, that she sees this pattern of Sutton having tiffs with everyone in the group, and Garcelle is always right there to defend her, where Garcelle and Sutton continue to stand firm in that being the definitions of being good friends. But Erika then invokes the Elton John party spat from earlier this season, trying to make it out to be as this dig at Rinna by Sutton in defense of her friend Garcelle. But Sutton says she did not want it to go as far as it did and was not meant to be as hurtful as it became, leading to Rinna getting heated, wanting Sutton to share why she just continuously wants to hurt Rinna. And when Rinna isn't happy with Sutton's reasons and Sutton references their inconclusive lunch earlier while also accusing Rinna of playing it up for the quote-unquote audience, Rinna starts mocking Sutton's southern accent, to which Sutton counters that, shading Rinna, saying, I mean, I like you some days, and I sometimes think you're a good person, which Rinna confesses she thinks Sutton likes to play dumb, but then says to Sutton's face, she does talk a lot of crap behind Sutton's back, which we as viewers have been privy to all season, and we got a montage with some reminder flashbacks for us. But she also confesses she wants Sutton to admit to wanting to drag her in defense of Garcelle so they can all move on. That's all she needs to move on. But Sutton now in person says she was sorry for how she handled this, saying, well, Rinna, you also do talk out of both sides of your mouth. And this seemed to be the last straw for Rinna, leading her to suggest with her gut that Sutton leave her home if she's going to talk that way, coupled with a very guttural fuck you. But after Sutton stays and doesn't really let this affect her, Rinna is now continuing to work herself up, pulling out her inner soap actress, which Sutton, I think, rightfully suggests would take an exorcism to remove, raising her voice, vowing, in a tone very reminiscent of Amsterdam years ago, if anyone comes after my husband or my family, I will fucking hunt you down. And after some bug-eyed reactions from the other girls, other than Erika, who is just kind of mouth-watering at this attack on Sutton, kind of swirling her rosé, everyone seems clear now on that line in the sand, which is very rightful. But anyways, it does not end there. And as the sun is setting on the Hamlin household, Sutton keeps trying to apologize, but then it appears a very drunk Rinna is now slurring her words while drawing attention to the quote-unquote humiliation she and Harry, she says, didn't endure, even though she thinks that was Sutton's goal in exposing the charity behavior. But then at the end says, well, everyone, including Sutton, was humiliated. I guess Rinna is taking a page out of the Erika playbook from last episode of just speaking nonsense when she's drinking. But basically, she is admitting that everything Sutton said was true. And if it wasn't true, then why keep giving it light? And how can you be even slightly humiliated if no part of it was ever true? But also, I think Rinna needs to be very careful here with her drinking, now that she is getting into the alcoholic beverage industry, because from my understanding, that industry is very big on preaching responsible drinking. I'll just leave that part there with that. But side note, it was laughable when Dorit during this scene was trying to pull the "how dare you try to speak poorly on one of our friends on national television," as if they didn't all know what they were signing up for on a reality TV show where they make all these appearances on all these national platforms. But anyways, speaking of that national platform broadcast, Lisa Rinna was the guest on Watch What Happens Live, the episode right after this episode that night, where Rinna and Andy got right into it talking about the recent viral moment of Rinna with Erika and Diana, as Erika was served yet another lawsuit at the airport LAX, returning from a trip with all three of them to Hawaii, where they joke Rinna never really ran from a camera that fast ever before. She is clearly very much a camera whore, so that was pretty serious. But Rinna adds detail that the server lady posed as a fan to get a picture of them to get close enough to serve Erika, but they go on to then address Rinna's messy social media behavior, comparing it to Candace Dillard of Real Housewives of Potomac, which some feel Andy is kind of being inconsistent on his approach to that between Lisa and Candace. And people are trying to add a race overtone, undertone angle to this. I'm not sure about that, but it could just be one has a longer history with Andy than the other. And I don't know. But while Rinna continues to own it, it just still doesn't excuse the behavior. And of course, Andy is trying to help her out by saying, well, maybe have some self-control. But it appears just like Erika, and unlike her behavior with Erika when served, Rinna cannot help herself to just continuously need attention when she's not getting it. But Rinna then addressed Diana's lip licking and made kind of a good point on this, citing her acting career of sometimes you don't know you're doing something in general, whether it's on camera or in person, until you either see it on camera or someone tells you that you're doing something. I can attest to this on this channel. I've had to kind of learn to fix some quirks or some tics on camera on the channel, so I get that. But Rinna says Erika's laxative comment was wrong, but also said that you can't really say anything right in that situation regarding eating disorders, but also makes it more clear to me, this response from Rinna, that it is a very sensitive, serious storyline regarding Crystal for everyone, because a lot of these girls have shared about their struggles with eating and just body image over the years. So anyways, but then I think they did Rinna really dirty on the game they played, which is in reference to Sutton saying that Rinna needs an exorcism to get her soap actress self out of her, by them lowering her tone of voice when she was answering these questions. I just thought that was really funny. I did laugh out loud. But during a game later in the episode, Rinna said on the Denise Richards OnlyFans thing, she was cheersing to her, saying, "Good for her, go get your bag, go make your money, considering you're probably going to make more money there than you would being on this show," which I thought was interesting. And to me, I think had a little bit of a double meaning of Rinna playing nice and trying to sound supportive, but also really meaning like, stay on OnlyFans, do not come back to this show to either come back and attack me and others on the cast that went against Denise Richards, or even worse, replace one of them so they don't have a paycheck anymore, especially since Rinna and Erika and a few of the other girls who kind of went against Denise are rumored to be on the chopping block for next season. So very interesting, smart move on her behalf. But I will see you channel members in the extra recap and react for this episode. Thank you for having me in your online life. As always, if you missed any videos from this season, whether that be the full recaps, the extras for members, or the short video clips, the playlists are on the screen or in the description on YouTube, or if you're on any other platform besides YouTube, you can click around that channel for more.